3, and in the afternoon we will adjourn at 5. Thank you.
This will appear in Exhibit S2 of the bundle. So you will see the index at the beginning. The index appears
For some reason, I seem not to have the index anymore. It would have been on S1, isn't it?
Yes, the index is in bundle S1, but it appears after the first divider. In other words, after the statement.
Oh, I thought it appeared before the statement.
Yes, perhaps it should, but for the present it does appear after the first divider.
Does it not cover the affidavit, Mr. Agrizzi's affidavit?
It does deal with the affidavit, the first item. It does. Look.
Oh. Okay, well, if its correct place is at the beginning, then it should be at the beginning. Okay, but for now...
But for now, DCJ,
yes.
the index has been updated. There are 2 additions to the papers.
Yes.
They are annexures CC
Yes.
and annexures DD.
Yes.
Annexure CC is the full SIU report.
Yes.
Through some error, only part of the report is in the original bundle. So rather than remove it and replace it, we've just added the full report at the end. So the full report is annexure CC, and we will deal with that in evidence today or tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
The other one, annexure DD, is what? DD? It's an article that appeared in the press, and we will deal with that in due course.
Okay.
Then there's a new exhibit, Exhibit S8. You will recall, Chair, that we dealt at some length in evidence with the allegations in the affidavit of Mr. Petrus Venter. Annexure S8 comprises the annexures to that affidavit in which documentary and corroborative evidence exists, to which we will refer in due course. That's Exhibit S8, and it's a separate file which you don't have to have before you today.
Oh, well, then shouldn't it be mentioned when it's going to be handed up?
Well, it's been given to your registrar.
Oh, okay, all right.
So it has been handed up, but not placed on your desk.
You see, because we need to mark it if it's handed up already.
It has been marked, Exhibit S8.
S8.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Then, Mr. Agrizzi, if we may return to your evidence, page 35 of your affidavit, and go to paragraph 21.1. There you deal with an incident that is indicative of the relationship between yourself and Gavin Watson. Would you tell the Chair briefly what happened on the 7th of July 2000?
Just briefly, Chair, what happened was my family was coming down. I was working at the time, and they had a bad car accident, and they were all in ICU for about 6 weeks. And basically, Gavin would take charge, and he would try and assist where he could with the family. I still had to continue work, so he would pop in and see them in PE when he was there.
And generally, how did he act towards you and your family?
At that stage, Chair, he was very caring about it. He was very concerned about it. It was still in the early stages.
All right. Now, you say in paragraph 21.2 of your affidavit that from about 2003, the business of Bosasa operations started to change, and that you will deal with this in more detail below. That's merely by way of a headline. We'll come to that in due course. On page 36 of your affidavit, you deal with certain events relating to Ms. Mokonyane.
That is correct, Chair.
Who was she at the time in relation to Bosasa and its predecessor?
Previously, Chair, she was one of the directors of Diambo Holdings, who in turn owned shareholding in Diambo Operations,
Was
Pty
she-
Limited.
To your recollection and knowledge, was she a shareholder of Diambo Holdings or a director of Diambo Holdings?
As far as I'm aware, and as I've been told, she was a shareholder and a director of Diambo Holdings.
You never got an opportunity to establish whether that what you were told is true, because you say that as far as you were told. So I take it that you don't have personal knowledge whether she was a shareholder and whether she was also a director. It's just what you were told.
Chair, I remember seeing a document many years ago where she was registered on the letterhead of Diambo Holdings. I've just handed to the team a document that I managed to find that might also add some light to the matter as well. But if I could add, Chair, that
Yes.
we were always told that she was a shareholder and a director
Yes.
of Diambo Holdings and
Yes.
of Diambo.
Yeah. And the document you are talking about that you have handed into either the legal team or the investigation team, as far as you understand it, does it reflect that at a certain stage she was a shareholder and director, or only one of those, as you understand the document?
Chair, the document I gave them was a sale of shares agreement, and I wanted them just to do investigation on that so that they can establish for themselves.
Thank you very much.
May I just add, Chair, the investigation team dealing with this evidence is checking all the directorships and shareholdings of all the related companies, and that evidence will be placed before you in due course. Before
Okay.
referring to the letter, we'd obviously like to look
Yes.
at it before it's placed into
Yes.
evidence.
No,
Thank you,
that's
Chair.
fine. That's fine.
Do you recall, Mr. Agrizzi, during 2002, 2003, what position Ms. Mokonyane held in government?
If I recall correctly, Chair, it was the MEC for Safety and Security in Gauteng, as far as I can remember. I met her at the Bosasa offices a few times.
Right. Did Gavin Watson give you any instructions in relation to the provision of benefits to Ms. Mokonyane?
Chair, if I can refer to my affidavit on 22.3, there were numerous occasions.
22.3.
22.3. There were numerous occasions, and it was an annual effect that had to be sorted out annually, as well as various other benefits that were given.
You say in your statement that a list of items was provided on the instruction of Gavin Watson. Would you just place those on record, please?
The list of items, which was the same more or less every year, might have changed a little bit here and there, but it was 120 cases of cold drinks, 4 cases of high-quality whiskey, 40 cases of beer, 8 lambs, cut up, obviously, 12 cases of frozen chicken, 200 kilograms of beef in various braai packs, and then numerous cases of premium brandy and some specialty alcohol. I would get a list, as a matter of fact. My PA would phone me with that.
Well, we'll come to that in a moment. Where did you get the products from and how were they accounted for?
Well, because at that stage I didn't think anything was wrong. Everything went through the books as normal, as if we were using it for something else.
Who arranged for delivery?
I would arrange initially for the delivery, Chair.
And after the period during which you say you arranged for it initially?
After the period, there was a lady by the name of Catherine that would do it. And at that stage, we had an executive chef, and he would also oversee it for me as well.
Were further instructions given to you by Gavin Watson after 2002 in relation to Ms. Makonyane?
Chair, there were numerous requests that were given through the year. These, I would have to contact her personal assistant, and these included organising and paying for funerals in respect of deceased family members. I would have to arrange for a rental vehicle for up to 3 months at a time for her daughter, when her daughter was coming back from China, where she was studying. And
Through whom, before you go on, through whom did you arrange the rental?
Normally the rentals would be arranged through Blake's Travel.
Yes. Further instructions?
There were numerous catering for rallies on her instruction. For instance, the election campaign was run from the offices. We had to arrange all of that. We had to arrange the parties and the conferences at our offices.
Rallies, which rallies are you referring to?
There were numerous rallies. There was rallies where we'd have to cater up to 40,000, 50,000 people.
For whom?
For the ruling party, Chair.
And then you refer to catering?
Before you deal with that, would the rallies be at stadia or would they be in halls, more or less most of the time?
These were the Siyanqoba rallies.
Or Siyanqoba rallies?
Correct.
Which would normally be at stadia?
Normally.
Okay.
And then you refer in paragraph 22.5.4 to catering. Provide some detail to the chair, if you would.
Chair, we'd get ridiculous requests in the middle of the night saying that we needed to sort out birthday party cakes, cater for supporters, 10,000 at a time, so we'd have to just do it.
Right, would you go to page 268, please? That is annexure G.
Correct.
And on page 269 appears a photograph.
That's correct.
Would you tell the chair, please, what you know of what is depicted on that photograph?
Chair, I recall one Sunday evening, Gavin Watson phoned me. It was the afternoon. I had to drive through to Cafe Mozart and deal with a gentleman with Fritz, with Mr. Watson, and actually design this cake there. It had to be ready the next morning.
Do you have any experience in cake design?
When I was 14 years old, working in a bakery.
So did you design this one?
Yes, Chair.
Yes. And what year was this one, if you are able to tell us?
I can't remember when it was, Chair. It was on the Zuma's 72nd birthday.
Right, if you look at the cake, you will see the ANC flag, ANC colours, and a 72 on the top of the cake, and to the left a flag, happy 72nd birthday. Do you see that?
I do.
Does the Bosasa logo appear anywhere on this photograph or on the cake?
The photograph is very bad, but it does appear, because I know I designed it. In between, if you look there, there's a shadow silhouettes of people holding hands. In between the people holding hands, you will notice on the top tier, there is what seems dark blue writing and a crescent over it in orange. That there is actually the Bosasa Group logo.
All right, well, I'm not sure.
Well, I don't see people holding hands, but I see some orange.
That's right. That's
part of the
Bosasa logo.
Bosasa logo.
Yes, it looks like a bit of a tombstone upside down.
Yeah, well, I see something that looks like a wheel close to the orange part. Is that also part of the Bosasa logo?
That's right.
Oh, and then there is a picture of somebody whose face is not shown in full. So is the wheel and the orange part that would be part of the logo.
That's right.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Agrizzi. Then in 22.5.5, you relate another benefit. What is that?
This was the maintenance at the house which he owned in Silverfields, Roodepoort, which included all the electric fencing, generators, CCTV, gardening, ponds, lights, gates, absolutely everything really.
And what role did you play personally in the provision of these benefits?
Chair, I would be given an instruction to do it by Gavin Watson, the CEO, and I would make sure that the job got done.
You say that was soon after 2002?
That's correct.
Right. What happened in 2008 and 2009 is related in paragraph 22.6 of your affidavit.
Chair, in 2008, 2009, Mokenyane would visit quite often, and at one specific stage, Bosasa was approached to do a full analysis on the security of the hospitals in Gauteng specifically.
Before you go on, I think the Chair may want to ask a question relating to your previous paragraph.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, I'm thinking of that, but I wanted to allow him to give his answer to your question in full first before I go back.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay, so you may continue and then.
All right, so in 2008 and 2009, as I understand your evidence, Ms. Mokenyane approached Bosasa with a request to do an analysis of security at hospitals.
That is correct.
And you, in fact, on the instruction of Gavin Watson, did such an analysis.
That is correct.
And you prepared a report.
That is correct.
To whom did you give the report?
The report was given to Gavin Watson.
Right, and do you know its fate after that?
It was submitted to Nombolo Mokenyane.
Right, I intend to deal with related matter over the page, Chair.
Oh, okay. Let's go back to page 37, Mr. Agrizzi.
Yes, Chair.
And I'm just going to say something in general and then ask you a specific question. It's going to be important as you give your evidence to tell me which of the activities you were personally involved in, particularly with regard to delivering some things to certain people,
Yes, Chair.
or preparing them and handing them over to somebody to deliver and getting a report that it was delivered. And when, for example, you talk about providing catering for supporters at President Zuma's birthday parties, to say as much as you personally know about that. When you talk about the maintenance at Ms. Novula Mokenyane house in Roodepoort, to indicate what you personally know about that as opposed to what you may have told was done. So I just want to ask you about paying and organizing funerals in respect of deceased family members. Did you ever get to be personally involved in regard to that, other than maybe preparing money and maybe giving it to somebody to go and make sure that it's delivered?
Chair, when a request like that was made, I was told to leave everything and personally go and see to it. So I was personally involved. Although I might not have made the food or put up the tent, I would have had to authorize it, sign it, and hand it over. And I would be responsible ultimately and accountable for ensuring that everything went successfully.
So in regard to that, for example, therefore, you're telling me something that you personally know happened.
I can even recall where we had to put up tents and that, your Chair.
Yes, okay. And the arrangements about the rental of a vehicle for periods of 3 months and so on, that also you have personal knowledge of? Or how far does your knowledge go in regard to that?
Chair, the daughter would phone me up and request, I remember it vividly, an Audi A3 Cabriolet. I at one stage even called the daughter in because there'd been numerous accidents.
Yes.
And problems with the vehicle.
Yes.
And it started getting concerning.
Yes.
So I actually called her in one day and sat her down and said, can I arrange for driver training, special driver training for you, because it was getting embarrassing.
Yes.
So I was personally involved.
Yes. And the catering for ANC rallies, you have just indicated, you have told us about that. Are you able to give me an idea about, if you are able to, how many rallies you can think of where you actually made arrangements? It may be that maybe there are too many, in which case you can say maybe they are more or less a number that you can tell, a reasonable estimate. But if you are not able to, I will understand.
Sorry, Chair, it's too many to remember. I would have to consult with the ex-chef that was there who would know exactly, and I'd have to speak to some people, but I cannot remember how many. It was well over 10 or 12 rallies.
Yes. And would they have been, in terms of the rallies, you said they were Siyanqoba rallies. Was it only Siyanqoba rallies or also other rallies?
No, Chair, there were various issues.
Different rallies.
Totally different ones, correct.
Yes. All within Gauteng, I assume.
Yes, mostly in Gauteng.
Yeah. Excuse me. And the maintenance at her house in Roodepoort, how much personal involvement did you have in regard to that? And did you ever go to her house and see maintenance that had been effected there?
On numerous occasions I attended at the house with Mr. Watson, and I would, at the house with Mr. Watson, walk the site with one of the technical teams and explain to them how I wanted it done. I would then go back afterwards and check that they had done the work properly. I didn't want to get lambasted.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Agrizzi. Mr. Pretorius, you may proceed.
If you go to page 38, please, paragraph 22.7. In relation to the analysis of security at hospitals that you prepared and handed to Mr. Gavin Watson and learnt that it had been provided to Ms. Makonyane by him, you were told or given certain information by Papa Leshabani, Mr. Leshabani. What was that information?
The information I was given was basically that the report was to be given to someone else, and that person would submit it as a tender or in response to a tender, and we would just be doing all the hard work for everybody else, and everybody else would benefit. He actually mentioned at that stage was a gentleman by the name of Reggie Nkabinda that Papa Leshabani mentioned would probably be given the tender.
Right. What post did Mr. Nkabinda occupy at that time?
As far as I can recall, it was in the ANC Youth League. I can't recall exactly what post it was. I know that he is now the Treasurer General, I believe, of the ANC Youth League.
All right. You don't have original information in relation to the fate of that tender, do you?
Unfortunately not. I don't have any information because I didn't keep any on it. Sorry.
What you're telling the chair is based on reports you received from Mr. Leshabani.
I'm sure if that is correct, but I'm sure if the investigating team goes into the records of the tenders, they will come across the tender.
All right. Now, that's what I wanted to ask you about. The further investigation, are you prepared to cooperate in that respect?
Most definitely.
All right. What happened?
I'm sorry, in 2014, this was in 2008, 2009, was she still a MEC for security at that stage, as far as you remember?
As far as I recall, she was.
I'm just wondering what she had to do with hospitals, if she was MEC for security.
Chair, at that stage, there was a major issue with the Gauteng hospitals in terms of security. There were numerous tenders that were out at the stage, and if I recall correctly, they had problems with doctors being stabbed, especially at Lerotong and at Baragwanath.
Okay, so that may have been the angle from which she came in as MEC for security.
That's correct.
Can you recall the content of your analysis, just very broadly and in summary?
It was an analysis of their current and existing security infrastructure. They had a major problem with regards to infrastructural access control, ingress control, and there was a major problem with the amount of guards that were being utilized in the wrong places and not in the right places. So the whole blueprint that we put together was a holistic view on taking Gauteng's security of their hospitals and coordinating them with centralized control platforms, centralized control rooms, and being able to minimize on guarding and utilize that funds to be able to pay for additional technology requirements.
This analysis that you did as Bosasa, did you do it because you were going to be paid for doing it irrespective of who may ultimately have got the tender, or did you do it on the understanding that you would get the tender in the end? Because I see here you say you spent about 2 million rand, I think, in regard to that analysis. So what was the basis for your doing that analysis?
The initial cost was approximately 2 million. I don't remember the exact cost, and that's on my laptop, which I don't have anymore. However, the idea was that if we do the analysis and we provide a good report on how we could assist and improve things, that there would be a tender promulgated that we could be involved with.
So the understanding was that you would not be charging for that analysis because there would be a tender and maybe you would get the tender.
Chair, there was no official agreement or discussion regarding that between myself and the MEC, and at that stage, I can't say. That would have been discussed with Mr. Watson, as he would handle high-level issues. As far as I know, there was no charge.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know of any payment that Bosasa might have received for producing this report?
No payment was received.
All right. Okay. Then, if we could move on to 2014. Well, perhaps before we go there, can you recall anything further in relation to security at hospitals, and in particular whether Bosasa or a Bosasa company ever bid for the award of the tender?
I recall there was a tender that was promulgated for hospitals, not in the same light as this one. It was for a guarding tender, and I do recall submitting a tender. If I remember, it was cancelled. Nothing ever happened.
All right. Let's move on then to 2014. What happened then in relation to Bosasa and Ms. Makonyane?
Once more, Chair, we would be asked to do an analysis and a report on the securing of the dams in South Africa for the Department of Water Affairs. At the time, Minister Nomvula Mokonyane was the Minister of Water and Sanitation, the same procedure was followed. We were asked to do an analysis, come up with a solution. So what I did was, because time was short, they wanted a very fast generic overview, which I provided them with. I gave the report to Gavin Watson.
Do you know?
I know that the company never got paid for it, but
Paid for what? For the report?
For the report.
Yes.
So the report,
Approximately, what was the cost to Bosasa in preparing the report?
Chair, the approximate cost was about 1.3 million rand, because we'd have to spend intensive time. I had to get the assistance of official security people that understood dams and that type of thing to assist us.
What was the scope of the report? You mentioned securing the dams. Just tell the chair what the report you prepared was all about.
Well, the report included the preparation, the protection of the dams with high security fencing to prevent any ingress or any contamination of the dams. It included sensors to measure levels of dams, potential leaks, breakages in dam walls. It also included, if I recall correctly, camera systems that were integrated onto a singular platform which would be viewed by the minister at any one time. So it was a comprehensive security and a holistic plan to look at the dams in South Africa.
Did you understand at the time why this report was being prepared?
My understanding was that this was being done in order for a tender that was coming out that we could perhaps get the work on. So I was instructed as well by Gavin Watson to recommend a consultant group. So normally this would be put out to a consultant who would consult to the Department of Water Affairs, and that's basically what happened. I approached somebody, I introduced them to them, and they continued.
Well, let's take it step by step. You were instructed to recommend a consultant to the Department of Water Affairs.
Correct.
And the consultant's task would be to manage the award of the tender for securing the dams.
That is correct.
Did you then schedule a meeting, or was a meeting scheduled with an institution called Chieftain Consultants?
Chair, that is correct.
And was a meeting held?
That is correct, Chair. Meeting was held.
And very briefly, what happened at that meeting?
At that meeting, we explained that they needed to register in terms of the Department of Water Affairs and Sanitation. At the meeting, I was present, Gavin Watson was present, an elderly gentleman called Paul Silva, who has been busy with government for many years on these type of projects, was present, and a gentleman by the name of Raymond Mudley was present as well. So we had the Chieftain team there and ourselves.
Did you discuss with Chieftain the contemplated specifications of the project?
Correct, we did discuss the contemplated
So at this
specifications.
stage, had any tender invitations been issued?
At that stage, no tenders had come out as yet.
So-
They were still in process of being promulgated, and that would have been Chieftain's responsibility.
So before any bid or invitation to bid was issued, before the tender documentation was issued in relation thereto, you had not only on behalf of Bosasa prepared a detailed analysis of what was required to secure the dams in South Africa, but you'd also discussed the specifications of the project with a consultant who it was contemplated might actually manage the whole tender process.
Chair, that is correct.
And you discussed with them, according to your evidence, the specifications of the contemplated project. Did you discuss their potential role as consultants to the Department of Water Affairs for the tender?
Most definitely.
Was any expectation expressed to the consultants in relation to who would be awarded the tender?
That is correct.
What was discussed?
They would be awarded the tender, and they had to ensure that they would be pro the group going forward.
Pro the Bosasa group?
That is correct, Chair.
Well, what does that mean in relation expressly to the award of the tender?
It would mean that they would manipulate the tender in such a way that it would benefit Bosasa, and Bosasa will get the business.
How did you, that is Bosasa, come to be the ones talking about who should be appointed to the department, to Ms. Nomvula Monkonyane's department as consultants? How did that come about?
Chair, we had previously worked with them on something else, and it didn't work out at that stage, but that's why we kept in contact with everybody.
Was it Bosasa's own decision that consultants be found who would assist the department, or did somebody in the department ask Bosasa to please find consultants for them?
Strangely, neither, Chair, if I may respond. What happened was there was a third party whom I did not know at the stage who was orchestrating behind the scenes that there would be a company that would be employed as the consultants, and that company would choose the consultant. I actually never met the person from that company. I was just told about it.
So your interactions with these consultants, these specific consultants, at that stage had nothing to do with anything that came from the department. In other words, you knew that there was a tender that would soon be going out.
Correct.
And you decided that you needed to get consultants whom you would recommend, I guess, to the department. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you just made sure that it would be consultants who, so you would make sure that they get the job of overseeing the bid, and they would in return have to make sure that you got the tender.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just by way of background, Mr. Agrizzi, if you go back to paragraph 22.9, you say in that paragraph you received an instruction from Gavin Watson in relation to the issues just raised by the chair. What was that instruction?
I needed to find and recommend a consultant to the Department of Water Affairs, which would then ultimately award the contract.
To whom?
To Bosasa.
And then in paragraph 22.10.4, it appears that you discussed another issue at this meeting. What was that issue?
Chair, if I could just ask to repeat the question again to me, please.
You refer in paragraph 22.10.4 of your affidavit to a further issue that was raised at the meeting with Chieftain Consultants. What was that issue?
The issue was quite simply that we needed their registration forms from Chieftain to submit to the Minister. It was at a time when Gavin Watson was seeing the Minister. He'd often meet her at her house.
At whose house?
At the Premier's house, the Minister.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, Mr. Watson, Mr. Agrizzi, your affidavit at paragraph 22.10.4 says that Gavin Watson was seeing to the minister. Your evidence is that Gavin Watson was seeing the minister. They're two very different things. What was the position?
And seeing two in the affidavit is in quotes.
Yes.
Chair, Mr. Watson would take money with to see to the minister when he was seeing the minister.
Okay,
Chair, is that sufficient, or must I give you the amount?
well, you can tell us the amount as well.
I know the monthly amount was 50,000 rand.
Oh, and he would deliver it himself personally, or sometimes he would send you or somebody else?
I would have to pack it, and he often would deliver it in front of me.
Also, sometimes you went to Ms. Nomvula Mokonyane's house with him.
Yes, the house in Eccleston Drive in Bryanston, as well as the house in, if I remember correctly, it is a name.
Okay, maybe it might not be a good idea to
Okay.
mention the address from a security point of view, but I don't know, Mr. Pretorius, I think the witness wants to demonstrate that he knows where the house
Yes.
is, but I don't know from a security point of view whether, or maybe it's enough if it's just the street and not the number.
Well, perhaps we should do it this way, Chair.
Yes.
If you are asked at any stage about the particular address of the two houses you've talked about, you could provide it.
Most definitely.
And you could identify the house personally from memory because you visited those houses.
Frequently.
And your evidence is that you accompanied Mr. Watson, Mr. Gavin Watson, on occasion when he and you then would see the minister.
That's correct.
And in relation to your particular functions prior to the meeting, you say that you were instructed to pack cash or what?
The monopoly money, the cash.
Right. The real money, I presume.
Yes.
And you say that you packed an amount of 50,000 rand.
Chair, that was a monthly amount on a few occasions, yes.
Over what period did you perform this function?
I cannot recall the exact period of time, but it is long.
By long, do you mean months, years?
No, Chair, this was years.
Well, that ties in with a question I had intended to ask earlier in relation to Christmas groceries, if I can call it that you said from 2002/2003, every end of the year these were provided to her. Is that right?
Chair, you're 100% right.
Yes. Now I wanted to find out. You said these started, as far as you know, around 2002/2003. Are you able to tell me whether by the time you left Bosasa, whenever it was end of the year, this was still continuing, or did it stop at some stage while you were at Bosasa?
Chair, it never ever stopped. I remember 2 days before I went on my last leave with Bosasa, on the 13th of December, that I'd actually issued out the instruction that it needs to be, I approved everything.
Would that have been 2015 or 2016?
2016, Chair.
Yes. Okay, all right. Now, you have mentioned had two houses.
That's right.
Yes. Are there any special features that you might mention that show that you have been there? in case somebody
Chair,
were to deny
yes,
that
most
you've been there.
I can give it to you. The one house, especially the house in Krugersdorp, where you come into it's similar to a cul-de-sac. You go through the gate on your right, you'll see that there's a security guardhouse on your right. You walk straight through, you'll find a double garage. Under the one cover, I still remember commenting, there was a Vantage parked undercover. On your right-hand side, you'll find stairways that go up. As you're going up the stairways, on your left-hand side, you'll find the electrical board, which controls the generator as well. There are little footlights that are problematic, by the way, on the actual walkway into the front door. You'll then see the swimming pool on your right-hand side. It's a kidney-shaped swimming pool, and it was problematic in terms of the fountain, because the fountain kept leaking. If you go into the house itself, you go through the front door, very first right, you'll find her office.
And you say you went to that house numerous times?
Frequently.
Frequently, over a number of years?
Correct.
Thank you.
That is one of the houses, perhaps, and that was, you say, in the Krugersdorp area.
Correct.
Did you visit the house in the Bryanston area?
Yes, I did.
Any particular feature, very briefly?
It's got a massive swimming pool. You go up the driveway. As you get to the top of the driveway, there are 4 car parks, car garages, really, under the house. You drive into them. You then walk around. You'll see a massive swimming pool. It's terraced, so the whole house is terraced. You then walk through the door. On the left-hand side is a waiting room, which has got a fireplace. On the right-hand side is a meeting room, which has got a big boardroom table with about 14 chairs around it. The furniture is very Italianate, you know, the gaudy Italian type furniture. And then those were the 2 areas we would sit, and it's got a beautiful patio, beautiful view.
Thank you.
Let's then get back to your affidavit at paragraph 22.11. You were talking of a meeting that was held between yourselves and representatives of Chieftain Consultants. Who in particular was present at that meeting?
Your Chair, at the meeting I was present, Gavin Watson was present, Paul Silva, who was head of the facilities management for Chieftain, was present, as well as Raymond Moodley, who was the co-founder of Chieftain and whom I'd meet with on various occasions.
Do you know what happened after that in relation to the contemplated appointment of Chieftain Consultants?
I do not know what happened actually afterwards, but Chieftain Consultants were never appointed. And the reason, because of they didn't comply with the specifications in terms of the contractors. The specific problem, if I recall, was the zero registration, and as a consequence, Bosasa did not bid for the tender that came out, if it came out.
Right. Did you discuss this issue with Gavin Watson after these events had unfolded?
Chair, I did discuss it with Gavin Watson. I cannot recall which other directors were present when I discussed it, but I mentioned, and I was very disappointed, that we had spent a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of money had been paid out to Mokonyane with hardly any return in terms of value, in terms of like what happened with some of the other people. And the biggest concern was he indicated that I must be very careful because she has a lot of clout, and that if he did not do what she wanted him to do, we wouldn't have the protection. We needed her support for the protection from the SIU investigation, the Hawks and the NPA. And in this discussion, I tried to indicate to Gavin that it serves little or no purpose to continue. I remember it vividly. We spoke about it in the car outside her house. And I said, it's not serving us any purpose, this corruption and the payouts that we're making, because it's just getting us deeper and deeper into trouble, and eventually this is what's going to close down the business. And that's what's going to put 6,000 families at risk. I pleaded with him that we stop being politically based as a company. There's no need to do that.
Are you able to recall around when, which year, when did this happen, where you were outside of Minister Mokonyane's house and you were talking, you and Mr. Gavin Watson were talking about this? If you are not able to tell, it's fine, but if you are able to, it would help. Which year or?
Chair, this was around 2005, 2006.
Okay.
It's when things really started getting a bit much for me.
No, that's fine. And before Mr. Pretorius asks another question, let me ask this. The monthly payments to Ms. Mokonyane that you have talked about, did they happen, were they still happening when you left Bosasa?
That is correct.
And they had started around about what, 2002, 2003?
Chair, I know about them from when I started packing. I can't,
Yes.
I don't want to allude to knowing
Yes,
about it, and I
yeah.
didn't. I'm being frank and honest
Yes.
with you in this
Yeah.
commission,
Yeah.
and I'm under oath.
Yes.
It started when I started packing.
Or you began to know about them when you started packing?
Yes.
Whether or not they had happened before that, you don't know?
No,
Okay.
I cannot.
And I'm trying to remember from your affidavit, maybe you might be able to tell, in terms of when you started packing, would that have been about 4 or 5 years before you left?
It was in 2009, I think.
Oh, okay.
I haven't looked at my notes.
Yes, okay, but quite some time, a number of years before you left.
Correct.
Yes. So, and you say throughout the time, from when you started packing the money to the time you left, Ms. Mokonyane was receiving monthly payments.
Your Chair, it was monthly.
Yes.
I wouldn't deliver it. Mr. Watson would deliver it
Yes.
because he used those times to talk to about the politics of the day.
Yes. But did you also say sometimes he would deliver it when you were with him or not?
Correct.
Yes.
If there was a serious matter to discuss regarding the NPA, like at one stage he wanted a senior person to withdraw the matter from the police, I was there because I would need to have to go back to the attorneys and tell the attorneys exactly what I'd been told politically.
Yes. Now, was the money that was given to her packed in what you have told us from last week, grey security bags like the other amounts?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The dates given in one of your previous answers to the Chair when he asked more or less the period relevant to the contents of paragraph 22.13, you mentioned 2005, 2006. Do you recall, in relation to that, when the SIU investigation commenced? We will give that detailed evidence in due course, but just to place it in its proper context for the present.
I'd have to, sorry, Chair, I've got so many things in my mind this morning, but I can't
Yes.
remember the actual date they started the investigation with the SIU.
Yes.
I know that it was about that time, and I know that there was information starting to come out from the SIU report via the press.
Okay.
Then there may be a lack of clarity around one of your answers to a question that I put. In relation to the money paid to Ms. Mokonyane, you say that you raised an issue with Gavin Watson that you were not getting much return for that investment, as it were.
Let me put it into context, Chair. What I'm trying to say is that one doesn't actually gain from doing that. And quite simply, what I was trying to explain to Mr. Watson was, the more you give someone, the less they'll do for you. if you're bribing them, because they don't want to be tainted. They don't want to be seen as close to you. So I was trying to explain that it's not good to do it. That's what I'm trying to explain.
I'm not sure that I understand that.
Okay.
You say the more you pay somebody that you want to bribe,
Yes.
the more likely they won't help you. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not talking about physical money, cash.
Or what are you talking
I'm
about?
talking about doing the favors, doing the lechotlas, being in the forefront, doing the cakes, doing the birthday parties, organizing things. That, as soon as people see that you're openly doing it for them, they're not going to give you business because it'll be, it's too open. Everybody will know that, oh, you see, Bosasa did the birthday cake, they did the functions. That's why they're getting business. So what tends to happen is people will then not give the business because you're giving things to them openly.
Or your concern arose out of the fact that some of these favors were done publicly.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. No, that
I was
then
complaining.
understand. Yeah.
Well, we need to clarify then what you say in paragraph 22.13, Mr. Watson. The second sentence reads, I pointed out that a lot of money had been paid to Mokonyane with no return to Bosasa.
That's correct.
Well, would you explain that, please?
That is cash money as well that has been paid to her.
Right. Now, when you say that Bosasa received no return for the money paid, were you limiting your evidence to these particular circumstances in relation to money paid to Ms. Mokonyane, or were you suggesting to the chair that the bribes you paid had no outcome or benefit to Bosasa?
There was no benefit whatsoever that came from it.
From what?
From giving her money, no contracts. Is that what you're asking me?
Mokonyane. Yes.
Yes.
No, what I'm saying is you put your answer to me in general terms.
Yes.
You didn't limit it specifically to money paid to Ms. Mokonyane.
That's right, Chair.
Now, if someone reads your evidence, they may seize upon the statement to say, but Mr. Agrizzi himself said that they received no return for money paid. Now, are you referring in that sense to Ms. Mokonyane's circumstances, or are you suggesting that Bosasa got little benefit for the bribes paid about which you've spoken in the last week?
Chair, in the context of getting business, there was no benefit. In the context of stopping the SIU report, there was no benefit whatsoever. It was a waste of time and effort to try and corrupt somebody.
Now, let me put it this way. Am I to understand your evidence to be to the effect that you complained to Mr. Watson on that occasion that you have talked about, that Bosasa had paid a lot of money to Ms. Mokonyane, but Ms. Mokonyane was not giving Bosasa anything?
100% correct, Chair.
And this had happened over a long period of time.
That is correct, Chair.
Yes. Okay. And what did Mr. Watson say when you said, we're wasting money, we're paying her a lot of money, but we're not getting anything, she's not passing contracts to our side or making sure we get some business from her department? What did Mr. Watson say in relation to this?
He told me that she had a lot of clout, and if we stopped doing it, I can't use the word yeah, we'd have a lot of problems. That's what was told.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Does that give clarity, Chair?
Yes, no, at least I understand, yeah.
What I was trying to say, Chair, is the discussion emanated because I was frustrated with him.
Yes.
And I said, what are we doing this for anyway? Wasting our time.
Yeah, okay.
Your answers now, I understand, are specifically related to the relationship between Bosasa on the one hand and Ms. Mokonyane on the other.
That's right.
I'm not sure I made myself clear enough in relation to the line of questions that I'm now putting to you. But let me put it another way. You paid what you've described as bribes in relation, for example, to the Department of Correctional Services.
That's correct.
Did Bosasa receive benefits emanating from those bribes, in your opinion?
They got contracts and they got extensions.
So the evidence you're giving concerning Ms. Makonyane should be limited to her and the
Correct.
circumstances relating to the payments to her.
Correct.
Thank you. Then if we can go over the page, please, to page 40. You deal there with the relationship between...
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius. Do you know whether, prior to this discussion that you were having with Mr. Watson, where you were expressing your frustration that Ms. Makonyane was being paid a lot of money over a long period, but she was not giving Bosasa anything, do you know whether Mr. Watson had at any stage got her to agree that she would do anything, she would do something for Bosasa, or not really?
Chair was aware of the fact that she would be handling Jacob Zuma and the prosecution, but nothing had been forthcoming, nothing whatsoever. And it was frustrating me because it worried me continuously.
What exactly was she supposed to do about Mr. Jacob Zuma and about the prosecution?
She was supposed to have the whole charges withdrawn from at that stage it was with the SAPS.
Though that is charges against Bosasa.
Correct.
And where was Mr. Jacob Zuma going to fish her in regard to what she was going to do?
Well, he features further on in the statement quite heavily in terms of the Hawks investigation and that. And she was going to speak to him, and she was going to speak to another person that was mentioned as well.
So are you saying that she was going to speak to Mr. Jacob Zuma at the time with a view to achieving the dropping of charges against Bosasa?
Correct, if there were charges.
At that stage, you didn't know whether, you had not been told there were charges?
Officially, no,
Or there were no charges. Thank you. Mr. Pretorius.
A moment, Chair, please.
So your complaint against Ms. Nomvula Makonyane was that she was just taking the money and not delivering?
It was in general, not only for her, but for everybody else as well.
No, I don't understand that answer.
I'm also trying to
Please
understand.
explain.
What I'm trying to
When
explain,
you say not for herself only, but for other people as well.
what I'm trying to say, Chair, is that I was getting to a point where I was very frustrated with paying people money, all right, and for what? We actually didn't need to do it to have a good and credible business. We didn't have to be political. So it was a debate I was having at the time in the car with Mr. Watson, that why do we continue to pay bribes as a company? And one of the examples I used was specifically Nomvula Makonyane.
Also, so there would have been other people who were like her, in the sense that they were being paid a lot of money, but they were also not giving Bosasa any benefit.
The issue, that is correct, Chair. The issue I had was not that we needed to get the benefit. That wasn't the issue, that we weren't getting a benefit. The issue was that you have major companies out there that don't need to pay bribes to be successful. Why couldn't we just become a company that was apolitical, had no political connections, and didn't have to pay bribes? That is the context that this has all been put into.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm afraid, Mr. Agrizzi, I'm going to go back because there must be clarity here.
That's fine.
The bribes you paid in relation to Department of Correctional Services, the Airports Company for South Africa, and the other bribes
Yes.
that you've spoken about, did
Yes.
those produce results in the sense that they caused the award of contracts to you?
They were corrupt and they produced results, Chair.
So nothing you're saying here about whether it was necessary to run a business like this detracts from that evidence that you've given, I understand.
Not at all. What I'm trying to say, Chair, if I may, is that I honestly believe that based on the fact that a good job was done and that there was no fault with the services, we actually didn't need to pay bribes. We could have got the contracts based on credibility.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm sorry, Chair.
You said a minute ago that your point in relation to your discussion with Mr. Watson outside Ms. Mokonyane's house was, why do we need to pay bribes? Did I understand you correctly?
That's correct.
Yes. But the impression I had got earlier on when you were relating your discussion with Mr. Watson I didn't get the impression that that was the point. I got the impression that you were frustrated that you were paying and not getting anything in return. I'm mentioning that because that was the impression I got, and I just want you to reflect and indicate which one of the two impressions is correct. I thought your frustration was out of the fact that you were paying as Bosasa, Ms. Mokonyane, a lot of money, but were getting nothing in return, and that your point was, what's the point of keeping on paying if we're not getting anything back?
Chair, your assumption is correct. That is it. What I was trying to put into context was the whole debate in the car that morning was about, do we have to do these things as a company? Do we have to continue with them? Because I was starting to get fed up with doing these things in general. Mokonyane was a part of that discussion outside our house.
But you see, it's two different points. If your point is we should not do bribes, it's one thing.
Yes, Chair.
If your point is we should not do bribes if we are not going to get anything in return, that's another thing. So what I was saying to you a minute ago was that when you earlier on gave evidence about your discussion with Mr. Watson outside Ms. Mokonyane's house, the impression I got was that your point was, why should we pay bribes if we are not going to get anything back? But later on, you said your point was we should not be doing bribes. So I just want to see whether you want to clarify that for me. So it's two different impressions I'm getting.
Yes. Chair, let me put it into perspective. Maybe you'll understand. I just come back with Mr. Watson. I would drive his car. I would drive all the way back from Summerfields where Mr. Mti stays. And we're driving in the car and we were discussing the SIU investigation and the NPA and all of that. In the car, I said to him, has this all been worth it? Do you honestly believe that paying bribes and being politically connected actually helps you get business? We then went and were parked, and we were still talking outside Mrs. Mokonyane's house in Krugersdorp. And my question to him was, here's a classic example of someone that we've been paying, has not delivered squat. Does that maybe explain the context of the whole thing?
I'm not sure, but Mr. Pretorius may proceed.
Thank you. Let's wrap this up briefly. Mr. Agrizzi. You say quite clearly, and you've confirmed that you meant to say, I pointed out that a lot of money had been paid to Mokonyane with no return to Bosasa.
That is correct.
So you pay money to a government official and you get nothing in return. You say she delivered squat.
Correct.
You then go on to speak about running the business in another manner. Do you see that?
Yes.
May I suggest to you that the first part of paragraph 22.13, as you've confirmed, not once, but on several occasions, is correct. That
That's right.
You were frustrated that you were paying a lot of money to a government official without any return.
Correct.
And by that, you meant without getting any contracts, without getting any financial benefit.
That is correct.
The second part of the paragraph, where you conflate that issue with another issue as to how a business should be run in general terms, is a separate issue.
I understand the way you see it.
Well, is it correct? Because I want to suggest to you that the second part of the paragraph is there to make you look better.
Chair,
I must just say, before you answer, satisfy yourself. If you say yes, satisfy yourself that that's what you believe. That's your answer. If you say no, satisfy yourself that that's the answer you are giving.
Chair, quite simply, the answer that I gave in the affidavit, I tried to indicate to Mr. Watson that it serves no purpose trying to conduct the business in a political manner or by bribing people. I was getting sick and tired of having to pack money for people. That is the truth.
Is it possible that in that discussion you didn't have one point to make, namely, why must we continue paying bribes to do business? But that you had more than one point to make. One being, why should we continue to pay bribes to do business? But if we continue to pay them, why should we pay them when we get nothing in return? Were you making both points? Were you making only the one point, namely, why should we continue paying bribes? Or were you making both points?
Chair, the point I was making was quite simply, we need to stop paying bribes because it serves no purpose and we get nothing in return. That was the point I was trying to make.
Of course, from Bosasa's point of view, based on evidence that you have given last week, paying bribes served a good purpose for them when they got a lot of contracts, and a lot of contracts were extended without tender and without competition. That part has to be true, that it served a good purpose for them. It was an illegal purpose, but it was a good purpose for them, isn't it?
Chair, you're 100% correct, but how many people did it hurt and kill in the process? That's the sad part.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Right, well, Mr. Agrizzi, let's conclude this debate about the science of bribery and Bosasa. You make 2 points in 22.13.
Correct.
So one is you were paying money to Ms. Mokonyane and you weren't receiving any benefit.
That's correct.
The second is you questioned the policy of paying bribes in order to secure business.
That is correct.
And there was another way of doing business which was a legitimate way.
That's correct.
After this discussion, did you continue to arrange for payments to government officials for benefit?
Yes, I did.
Then let's go on then to page 40.
So Mr. Watson didn't go along with the idea of stopping doing business in this way, namely through bribes.
Chair, it would take me the rest of the afternoon to explain what was said, but in a nutshell, I was told, you're in Africa, do as Africa.
Thank you.
Right. And you continued in your participation as before?
That's correct.
Okay. Then let's move on then to page 40, paragraph 23.1, please. You now relate events relevant to a Mr. Sesinyi Siopela and his relationship with Bosasa, correct?
That is correct, Chair.
When were you introduced to Mr. Siopela?
This occurred during 2005, 2006. I was introduced to him on a Saturday morning. I was visiting with Gavin Watson at the Hyde Park Shopping Centre. He had gone there specifically for a meeting with Mr. Mansell and myself, and just leaning against the wall at a shop that sold record players, B&O I think was the name, was Mr. Siopela. And it was then that he was first introduced to me.
Well, let me ask this, Mr. Agrizzi. When one reads your affidavit, one gets the impression that you have a very good memory. And I see that you have just told us that you can even remember on what day of the week it was when you were introduced to Mr. Siopela. Have you got a very good memory?
Not at all. I have a very good long-term memory, Chair. My short-term memory is terrible.
Okay, all right, thank you.
What was your knowledge of Mr. Siopela's history and qualifications?
My knowledge was that I was first introduced to Mr. Siopela, that he was Peter Makaba's bodyguard and driver, who was the previous ANC youth leader. He had an LLB degree but had never done his articles. I was also told, Chair, that he was very close to the previous detail of the late President Nelson Mandela. I was told that he was very influential in government circles, and he was involved in a major way with Fana Tlongwana from the arms deal. That's what I was told.
Right. In relation to Mr. Siopela's involvement with Bosasa or Bosasa-related companies, do you recall what happened during or about November 2004?
Well, I refer back to November 2004, Chair, because apparently he had been already involved in Bosasa. I just did not know about it. He was on the payroll as a consultant. I, at that stage, was not allowed to see the Concilium payroll, so I can't attest to the exact date. But he was a consultant then. He was being managed by Dr. Jurgen Smith and by Gavin Watson. At a later stage, he was allowed to utilize, this was in 2006, I think it was, he was allowed to use the Bosasa VIP travel account for his own ends and for people he needed to travel around with.
And you say in your affidavit his travel expenses would be indirectly paid by him because it was deducted from his income, which had been paid by Concilium.
That's correct.
And during 2011, did he receive a benefit at the instruction of Gavin Watson?
In 2011, it became more and more prevalent that Gavin needed his assistance, and Gavin approached me and said to me, I need to buy him a new vehicle, which I ordered for him, and I had to provide him with a company expense card and a company credit card for petrol as well. And that started happening more, and then I know for a fact that there were no deductions made in terms of the travel as well.
No deductions from his income.
Correct.
Did, to your knowledge, Mr. Sipela give Mr. Gavin Watson some information regarding developments at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development? And I'm referring
Yes.
to paragraph 23.5 of your affidavit. What information was given?
That is correct. I cannot tell you what information Mr. Sipela gave Mr. Watson. I can only tell you what information Watson gave me.
What
I
did
wasn't privy to that meeting specifically.
Right. What did Mr. Watson tell you?
So Watson told me to get ready and to be able to draw up a design and to be able to implement a national program for the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development.
Right. A design and a program for what? I'm sorry, Chair.
Maybe before you proceed, you said he was, Mr. Sipela, a consultant to Bosasa or to Mr. Gavin Watson. He was a consultant, is that right?
That's correct.
In terms of the work he was doing, was that liaising with potential clients for Bosasa and being a link with clients, or what was the content of his duties as a consultant?
That is correct, and it was to get involved with politicians, which he'd introduce us to.
Okay.
And that's why I give the history of Mr. Sipela.
Yes, thank you.
At the time that Mr. Sipela was employed as a consultant and paid by Consilium Business Consultants Pty Limited, did he have any other form of employment?
I'm not aware of that. I can't recall where he was working.
And when was this information received by Gavin Watson, or to put it differently, when did Gavin Watson tell you about the information he had received from Sipela? More or less.
Chair, I was told by Gavin Watson that the Department of Justice Constitutional Development are looking to investigate the implementation of security systems. I cannot remember the exact date that actually was told to me.
More or less, the year before 2010?
And this is what I mean about the short-term memory. It must have been 2010.
Okay.
Did Mr. Sipela give you any information in relation to his connections?
Yes, he often would tell me who he's working with.
And provide some detail, please, for the chair.
I don't understand that question correctly. Are you talking only in terms of correctional Department of Justice and Constitutional Development?
No, anyone else? And I'm referring to paragraph 23.6.
Yes.
So my question is not limited to Department of Justice and Constitutional Development.
Okay.
It's specifically in relation to what Mr. Sipela told you about his connections in various arms of government, to put it broadly.
So Mr. Sipela would tell me that he's working with various individuals, and they were high-level people, DGs. There were people that he was working with that I'd been introduced to, and some that I didn't even meet. But I would be told that I would have to prepare money for them. So he would say to me, I want you to prepare X amount, and these people are benefiting from it as well.
All right, we'll come to the payments in due course.
Okay.
But for the moment, did he tell you anything about whether he was connected to officials in the National Prosecuting Authority or other law enforcement agencies?
Yes.
What did he tell you?
Do you want me to mention the names, Chair?
Well, you don't in your statement, so I'm not inviting you to go further than your affidavit at this stage, perhaps later. But for the present, did he tell you anything about high-ranking officials in these institutions, in particular law enforcement agencies?
Yes, he interacted with them on that level, on ministerial level. And he also made sure that he let us know that Bosasa could benefit in high lucrative tenders that were coming out. Aware of the fact that the money was paid to Siapela for these unlawful issues, Siapela just asked me for an amount. I would prepare it, and I would then raise it with Mr. Watson. Mr. Watson would tell me, just do as Siapela tells you to do. It's fine. He's aware of the people. The cash that was handed over to him was then distributed by him, and it happened from till 2016, till I left. Yes. Does that answer your question?
In broad terms, yes, but specifically, no, Mr. Agrizzi. I'm asking specifically about whether Mr. Siapela ever told you that he was connected in any sense with officials in the National Prosecuting Authority, the Hawks, and the erstwhile Scorpions.
Most definitely, he did.
He did tell you that?
Yes.
And did you have any information from him that appeared to verify what you had been told by Mr. Siapela?
Chair, if I may, I just want to know, do you want me to mention who the people were?
No, what Mr. Pretorius is asking at this stage
Yes.
Is this. You have just told me that Mr. Siapela told you had interactions with certain people in enforcement at the NPA.
Correct.
And Mr. Pretorius is asking whether you ever had occasion to receive information from Mr. Siapela which corroborated what he had told you, namely that he had connections and he was interacting with people in the NPA.
Chair, I'm well aware that's the question, and my answer to that is most definitely. I'm just asking, do you need me to give the names?
No, at this
to
stage he's not
verify it?
asking. No, at this stage he has not asked for the names. He just wants you to be able to say, yes, I did, if that is the
Yes.
case, get information through him that suggested that he did have interaction in the NPA. Then he can ask further questions.
Chair,
Yes.
that was my answer, yes.
Thank you.
But I
Yes.
can elaborate if need be.
All right.
Yes,
Well,
okay.
paragraph 23.6 of your affidavit. Just take a moment to read it, please.
Yes.
Is what you say in that paragraph 23.6 correct?
100%.
So is it correct that, as you say, it always amazed me how Siapela would be able to verify information that we had received, particularly in relation to the investigation into Bosasa?
It was spot on. I was shocked.
We'll come to more detail in due course about Bosasa's interest in the SIU investigation in particular. In paragraph 23.7, and if you need to just refresh your memory, please do so, you expand on the relationship between Mr. Siapela and Bosasa, and in particular Gavin Watson, and you record how payments were made, to which you've already referred. Would you tell the Chair, please, of those circumstances?
As Chair, as it's contained in 23.7, all right, there would be numerous meetings with high-ranking government officials. Often there would be visits as well to the offices of Bosasa, which he would accompany us with. Although I was aware of the fact that the money was paid to Siapela for unlawful purposes to these government officials in turn, I only supplied him with the cash from 2009 onwards. And Siapela would just ask for an amount and would be done. But he was influential, and he was able to get people to do things and get information to us that was accurate, that was informative, and that assisted the process. Does that answer the question, Chair?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So in relation to the payment of monies, sorry, I answered the question on your behalf, Chair. Perhaps I should.
Well, I confirm the same thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
So the procedure you speak about in paragraph 23.7 is the following. Mr. Siopela would request an amount of money from you.
That's correct.
Did he tell you what the purpose of that payment of money to him was?
Correct, he would.
What did he say?
He would tell me where it was, which department it was, or what transaction it was happening for. Sometimes he wouldn't give me all the detail, but at least tell me where it was going to.
So Siopela came to you, he asked and describe in general terms the purpose for which money would be paid.
That's correct.
He would give you details of departments to which it would be paid, or official, and he would give you details of contracts in respect of which monies would be paid.
It was very broad stroke. I often would request more detail, and he would say no.
Right. Did you request details of individuals to whom money was intended to be paid?
Yes.
And did he provide that information?
No.
And did you raise that issue with Gavin Watson?
I did.
What did Gavin Watson respond?
Just told me to do what Siopela says.
So, whereas, as you told me last week, in regard to requests for payments, you would confirm with Mr. Gavin Watson. In regard to money requested by Mr. Siopela, the word from Mr. felt, if just give him the money. So you didn't have to, after some time, you didn't have to basically check with Mr. Watson. As long as Mr. Siopela wanted the money, you were supposed to give him. Is that correct?
Chair, that is correct, but I must just add that I would still ask. And sometimes he would tell me.
Yes.
But a lot of the times he wouldn't tell me. But if he didn't tell me, then I wouldn't be able to refuse because I had an instruction that anyway.
Yes, but the point I was making was that I was wanting you to confirm is that you, after Mr. Watson had told you, if Mr. Siopela is asking you for money, just give him. I was asking whether that meant that you didn't have to confirm with Mr. Watson each time Mr. Siopela asked money whether you should give him. You just gave him because that was the instruction.
It meant that, but I would still just every time double check and confirm.
Yes, but with Siopela, not with Mr. Watson.
Sorry, Chair, let me clarify.
Yeah.
Even though he had said to me, you don't need to check on him, I would still check.
Okay.
So I would still, even if it was a week later, I would still turn around and say, by the way, he asked for this, this, and this.
Okay.
I would still do that. I wasn't going to just stop it.
Okay, thank you. Now, just something arising from last week's evidence. When you were told by a director or somebody who was requesting money, when you were told by such a person who the money would be used to pay, would you always record that in the black book or not always, only sometimes?
Always in the black book. Always.
Okay. So
it didn't matter. It was always recorded. I always put it down.
yes. So if I know that we did look at some pages of the black book last week, and I can't remember whether, I think you might have said that some black books got lost or whatever, but if we were to get any of the black books, it would have names of people who you were told were going to be paid by different people who took money from you.
You would have all the detail if we can get the black books.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Again, just to provide a little more detail there, Mr. Agrizzi, you've said to the chair in evidence that there were many black books. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that you were responsible for recording information in those black books.
That is correct.
There were also lists kept on pieces of paper prior to the utilization of black books.
That's correct.
But you and one black book in your possession, which you've given to the investigators.
That is correct.
How long would one black book last before it was filled up, more or less, on average?
They were swapped, so we'd use one, take one, use one, take one.
Oh.
It would last about 6 months, 7 months.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sometimes a year.
Mr. Agrizzi, in paragraph 23.7.1 and following, you relate in your affidavit what you do know about payments.
Yes.
Let's just deal with 23.7.1 first, please. And before mentioning any names, I'd like to understand the basis upon which the particular name mentioned there is referred to by you. You say that a particular amount was paid to the Department of Correctional Services. How much was that?
The initial amount was 500,000 Rand a month.
And that was during the period 2008 to 2016?
As far as I can see, yes.
Right. And you say initially 500,000 Rand per month was paid, I presume, to Mr. Siopela, if one reads the statement in proper context, for onward payment to the Department of Correctional Services.
Correct.
Was that
Well,
amount
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius. I guess for onward payment to the department means for onward payment to certain officials in the department,
yes,
as opposed to the department.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean when you refer to the payment in the first sentence of 23.7.1?
Those were bribes, Chair.
Right. Was that amount later amended?
The amount was amended, Chair, to increase to 750,000 Rand, and this is when the Commissioner was appointed at this stage.
And who was that? Well, before we go on, you're about to mention a name. What is the relationship between the increase and the appointment of the Commissioner? Well, we all know that the Commissioner appointed at that time was Mr. Tom Mayani, so we can't ask you more about corroborative information. You say that it was increased to 750,000 Rand per month when the new Commissioner was appointed.
That is correct.
That is the new Commissioner of the Department of Correctional Services.
That is correct.
And that Commissioner was Mr. Tom Mayani.
That is correct.
How did you learn that?
Well, it was told to me by Siopela. So I would have to increase the amount that was packed.
And did you believe this?
His evidence, as I said earlier, Chair, was always very credible. I never needed to check up. I did check up in the initial stages, and now and again I would do a check. But his evidence and whatever he told me, it was always very accurate.
At this time, was Bosasa receiving any benefits from the Department of Correctional Services?
Maybe you need to clarify that, Mr. Pretorius, because you are asking him in the context of section 23.7.1, which relates to 2008 to 2016. Are you asking for about the whole of that period?
Perhaps I should clarify. Generally, your evidence relates to the period 2008 to 2016.
That's correct.
But in particular, in relation to the time when Mr. Mayani was appointed as National Commissioner, you say that the amount was increased from 500,000 rand per month to 750,000 rand per month.
That's correct.
You don't say in particular to whom any of this money was given personally.
I know where it's been, and Chair, quite simply, I mean, it's common sense, really.
Yes, well, anybody can make those deductions, including the chair, but let's just take it step by step. At the time Mr. Moyane was appointed National Commissioner of Department of Correctional Services, and therefore at the time the amount paid to officials, or for the purpose of payment to officials within the Department of Correctional Services, was Bosasa enjoying the benefits of contracts with the department.
That is correct, Chair. And if I can put into perspective, I'll give you an example. For instance, a letter was written to Mr. Moyane by a certain journalist to start querying about why are you retaining Bosasa? And it was just simply just put away. And when I asked the question, is Mr. Moyane assisting us? I was told, yes. What happened with the investigation? Absolutely nothing happened. So yes, it was confirmed to me as well. Does that answer the question?
Mr. Pretorius will follow up if he's not happy with that answer.
Thank you.
So the 500,000 rand to which you refer in paragraph 23.7.1 per month,
Yes.
was being given to Mr. Siopela, and according to him, he was paying it over to some or other official or officials in the Department of Correctional Services before Mr. Moyane's time.
That is correct.
That's right. And you are saying that after Mr. Moyane's appointment as Commissioner of Correctional Services, that monthly payment that you were giving to Mr. Siopela increased to 750,000 rand.
That is correct.
Yes. And Mr. Siopela is the one that would pay it to whoever it was supposed to be paid.
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you. Do you know whether it was paid to one official or whether to a number of officials? It was shared among a number of officials or divided among a number of officials. In other words, do you know whether Mr. Siopela, while it was 500,000 rand a month, would divide it among a number of officials at Correctional Services, or whether it was going to one person only?
In terms of the 500,000 initial, I know it was being split up, Chair.
Yes.
And thereafter, I presume, with the extra, they would have split it to the new additions.
Yeah, okay.
You, I understand, were tasked with preparing and handing over the money to Mr. Siopela.
That's correct.
It was always in cash, I understand.
That is correct, Chair.
What if
And in grey security bags.
The grey security bags would be packed in 50,000s, and up until 1 million would be packed into a cheap haversack type bag that was bought at the China Mall.
Okay.
Is it possible that Mr. Siopela simply pocketed this amount for his own purposes?
Most definitely not.
Why do you say that?
He was trusted, and he had a reputation and integrity that he used to transport quite a lot of cash previously, and there was never an issue. From time to time I would check, but I wouldn't say pocketed the cash.
Then in paragraph 2372, you
I'm
refer...
sorry, Mr. Pretorius. So, in other words, what you are saying is Mr. Siopela, as far as you know, was the type of person who would have, if he was required to take this money and go and pay certain officials, he would go and do that. And he was receiving his own salary as a consultant in relation to his work for Bosasa.
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you.
When you say that Mr. Siopela was a man of integrity, I presume you mean that he could be relied upon to deliver money in accordance with the understanding with Governor Watson and Bosasa.
I presume so, Chair. That's what I meant.
The next paragraph, 23.7.2, you may want to look at it because there are a number of allegations you make in it.
Yes.
You refer to 2.5% of all payments received from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development in respect of the 2013 tender awarded to Zondola IT to establish secure systems in the various courts.
Correct.
And you say that money was paid to Siopela for distribution to officials of that department. First of all, who or what was Sondolo IT Pty Limited?
Sondolo IT Pty Limited was a technology solutions provider that provided a singular platform on a IP-based infrastructure where we'd offer solutions for security, X-ray scanning, various electronic security and countermeasures.
And did it have a contract? Sorry, was it a company associated with or within the group?
Yes, it is.
The Bosasa group?
That is correct.
And did it have a contract with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development?
It had a very lucrative contract, yes.
And was that a contract which originated in 2013, as you said?
Correct, if I remember correctly.
And you say that the contract related to the provision of systems of security control in the various courts?
That's exactly what it did.
Approximately what amount was constituted by that 2.5%?
It was about 15 million South African rands, Chair.
So you say that about 15 million rand was paid to to officials of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development.
Correct.
From your own knowledge, are you able to say to which officials this money was paid?
I know four of the names.
From your own knowledge?
Correct.
Who are those officials? And I'm not talking about what Mr. Siopela told you.
I know that.
That will come later.
I know that.
So would you tell the Chair, please, which officials received money and the basis upon which you are able to say from your own knowledge that they indeed received money?
Chair, do you want the actual names? Do you want me to give them to you?
Yes, that's what you are being asked.
Yes.
There was a Mrs. Marsha. There was a Mum.
I'm sorry, Mrs. or
Miss Marsha.
Miss Marsha.
That's all I know.
Spell that, please.
Yeah, I think it was M-A-S-H-A. There was...
I'm sorry, do you remember what her position in the Department of Justice
was in
was?
security.
Sorry?
Was involved with security.
In security, okay.
Correct.
Yes. As you mentioned them, if you are able to say whether they were in security
There
or
was a
what
gentleman by the
positions.
name of Norman Tobane. There's a woman by the name of Mum Sniabusa. It's head of security.
I'm sorry, Mamsi?
Nyambusa.
Nyambusa.
Nyambuse.
Okay,
The fourth one, I just can't remember right now.
okay.
And how do you know that?
Because I was present at some of the meetings and payments.
So,
Where they were given cash,
Yes,
and each one of the ones you have mentioned.
yes.
Thank you.
and who was present when cash was handed over, and who handed over the cash?
Well, are you talking specifically relating to the whole of justice?
Now, I'm
Or
talking about these 4 individuals, 3 of whom you've named.
Joe Gumedi was present. And I was present, and they were present.
Yes, and who actually handed over the money?
Would have been Joe Gumedi.
But I thought Mr. Siapela was responsible for handing over the money.
There were 2 lots, if you recall. There are 2 lots. There's the big amount, which you would also hand over, and there were smaller amounts which were handed over.
And these particular amounts handed over to the 4 people, 3 of whom you've named, were these big or small amounts?
Well, they were small in comparison to that.
Right. Did Mr. Siapela tell you the names of persons to whom he handed money? You've already told us that you relied on his information.
I'm sorry, before you get there, let me ask about these 3 in respect of whom you have personal knowledge of them
Yes.
receiving money according to your evidence. You said Mr. Joe Gumede and yourself,
Yes,
the 2 of you were present.
that's correct.
Now, let's talk about Miss Marsha.
Yes.
Was it more than one occasion where you observed
That one was specifically one occasion, Chair.
one occasion?
That's correct.
And can you remember how much the amount was at that on that occasion, or not really?
That specific lady, I was there on the one occasion.
Yes.
I remember it one occasion only.
Yes.
The others I can remember regular, and it was
Yes.
more than one occasion.
In regard to her, where was the place where cash was handed over to her?
It was normally in a restaurant. I can remember vividly the signboard at 232 or something. It was a brown signboard in Johannesburg. And sometimes it would be at the Protea Hotel, I think it was a Protea, in Johannesburg itself.
Yeah.
Pretoria, sorry. Not Johannesburg, Pretoria.
Yes. Okay, and are you able to recall more or less when that may have been in terms of just the year? Or
No,
maybe
I
you
cannot
can't remember.
It was 2013, 2014, around there.
Okay, all right. Mr. Norman Tobane, what was he also within the security section of the Department of Justice, or what was his position as you understood?
He was Chair, he was an integral part because he handled the guarding services and he was involved with the security application services as well. And
Yes.
he was involved with security. He reported to Mrs. Mums Nyambusa.
Yes. I'm sorry, did you say in regard to Miss Marsha, you can't remember how much cash was?
I can't remember
You can't
exactly
remember.
how much
Okay,
it
all
was.
right. Mr. Norman Tobane, can you remember the amount?
I'll have to look in my notes, but the amount was, if I'm not mistaken, it is in my notes.
Yeah,
I think it was between.
It may be in the affidavit as well.
Yes.
About how many occasions were you present when he was given cash? If
About
you are
5 or 6 occasions.
About 5 or 6 occasions. And in terms of years or year, would that also have been around 2013, 14, or?
Yeah,
Other
it
years.
was from when we had received one of the first contracts. That's
Yes.
correct.
And the place where?
Various
that would
places.
happen? Various places.
As well, also restaurants. And at one stage, I still had to take him to his house
Yeah.
And I can explain where he stays, but I had to take him there and drop him off there with it.
So you at that time got to know where he stayed.
I gave him a lift home.
Yes, yes. And did you only go to his house when you gave him a lift only once, or did it happen?
It was
a few
only
times?
once.
Oh, only once,
Yeah.
yeah. But would your recollection of his house be as good as your recollection was of Mr.
Not as good,
Not
no.
as good, yes.
No, but I would find my way. I'd have to think about it.
If it was disputed that you have been there, you think you would be able to find your way there.
I will work a way out
Yeah.
of getting my memory jogged.
Okay, all right. And then Miss, do you say Mamsi?
Yes.
Mamsi, yeah, with regard to her, you can't remember the amount as well with her?
I've written it down, but
Or somewhere?
I can't remember exactly.
Okay, no,
There's
that's
certain
fine.
numbers that stick out in my mind, and
Yeah.
certain
Yes.
that I have to go and check.
Well, I think in regard to Mr. Tubani, you may have it in the affidavit, I'm not sure about
Yes.
the others. And also where this lady was given cash, would
Often we'd meet her-
restaurants as well?
Well, the one time I met her on the road while I was with Mr. Gumedi.
Yeah,
Second time I met her was actually at a restaurant. The third time, if I recall correctly, it was also at a restaurant. And, I mean, I can't recall the others.
about how many times did you observe?
About 4 or 5 times.
About 4 or 5 times, yeah. And when you met her on a road, can you recall what road it was?
It was the
Or-
Pretoria to Krugersdorp Road. I don't know
Yes.
what, I think it's called the R24 or something.
Okay.
I'm not too sure what the road's called.
Okay.
But it's between Krugersdorp and Pretoria.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Chair, is this a convenient time?
Yes, it is. We are going to take the lunch adjournment now, and we will resume at